Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Perfect. Hi, good afternoon, and welcome. And thank you for joining us for this afternoon's PGR Talks event, themed Impact and Innovation. My name is Queenie. I'm a PhD student at the International Development Department. I am also a member of the Black PGR Network, and we are co-hosting this event with the University Doctoral School, where I am also an ambassador. And with me today is my colleague, Gabrielle.
Hi, everyone, and welcome from me as well. As Queenie said, my name is Gabrielle, and I'm also a second year PGR in the International Development Department, a member of the Black PGR Network, as well as a UDS ambassador. We're excited to have you here for what promises to be a really engaging session featuring postgraduate researchers from across different disciplines and research areas.
Right, so in events like this, one of the questions that comes to mind is why Black PGRs? And the answer is not because Black PGRs belong in Black spaces. It is because oftentimes Black PGRs are always doing impactful and innovative research that is not often highlighted. And this is something that was highlighted at the Holding the Space conference that was held by the University of Westminster in April this year, which the UDS supported some of us to attend. And so from attending that event, we have realized that representation matters because that's what decides and determines whose voices gets heard, whose experiences are amplified, and even the kind of questions that we get to ask in research, right, Gabby?
Yes, agreed, Queenie. Black scholarship, lived experience, and practice is diverse and incredibly important. And I think today's speakers, who all attended the Holding the Space conference, really reflect that diversity of thought and experience. So today we're going to be hearing research that engages with topics like health, community, identity, migration, environmental sustainability, even mathematics, all approached through very different disciplinary lenses. Beyond this, however, the subjects themselves are also doing something important by showing to us their different perspectives, histories, and ways of understanding the world and bringing that forward in this academic space.
Yes, exactly. And again, impact does not only mean big opportunities, right? Impact is sometimes quieter. It could really be in challenging the stereotypes about communities. It could be researching things that reflect people in them. It could be asking questions that are often neglected, or even approaching familiar problems differently. And also, innovation doesn't have to mean reinventing the wheel. It could mean simply bringing light to research that has never been brought light upon before.
So today is really a celebration of excellent research, but also of the importance of inclusive research cultures where different voices, experiences, and intellectual approaches are recognized as valuable contributions to knowledge. We hope you enjoy the session and feel inspired by the conversations that we'll be sharing in today.
Okay, without further ado, I will start. We will begin. I will hand back to you, Gabi, so that you introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Queenie. Our first speaker for today is Christine Fadazi-Makuve. Christine is a 125th anniversary PhD scholarship recipient here at the University of Birmingham with significant professional and academic interests in inclusion and social justice. Today, she will be speaking to us about her life experiences and research in her capacity as an educationist and social anthropologist in training. Without saying too much, this research involves an ethnographic study exploring how second-generation British Zimbabwean young women navigate, negotiate, and construct identity, gender, and womanhood. Over to you, Christine.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to share my research with you this afternoon, but I'm also going to share the journey that led up to the research. Because inasmuch as I am the researcher in this situation, I'm also an inextricable part of the story, the research story itself. So when I immigrated to the United Kingdom in 1998, I, like many immigrants, experienced a fundamental rupture in the way that I felt I was positioned as a human being. So I experienced downward social mobility, othering, racism, misogynoir, and a forcible translocation of my existential sense of being me to a situation where every aspect of who I was refracted through the prism of race and the fact of being black. And I, like Alice in Wonderland, lost my muchness during this entire situation. The traumatic experiences I had led me to start to think about questions of identity and belonging, and how immigrants make sense of their lives in societal spaces that don't necessarily always embrace them or welcome them, or in some cases even humanize them. And these questions were magnified when I became a mother, raising my children, growing up in Britain as Britons, and you know, with a keen sense of the fact that although my experiences were different to theirs, there was actually an alarming intersection between some of my negative experiences and some of the ones that they were going through. I also reflected on their liminality, living betwixt and between, being both British and also wrestling with their Zimbabwean identity, their Zimbabwean culture, Zimbabwean history, etc. And I started thinking more broadly about second-generation migrant young people across the African diaspora in the United Kingdom, and then realized that there was very little research into this particular generation. And there was zero research into second generations from my community, the Zimbabwean community. And it's because of this that I decided to do this research. So my research explores the ways in which second-generation British Zimbabwean young women negotiate and navigate identity, gender, and womanhood. And particularly, I'm interested in the ways in which they carve out a space and make sense of who they are within liminal spaces, so between cultures, between generations, and between geographies. Methodologically, my research is an intergenerational, multi-sited ethnography with field sites both in the United Kingdom and in Zimbabwe. And in addition to the young women themselves, who will be my key interlocutors, I will also be involving matrilineal family members both in Zimbabwe and within the United Kingdom. So epistemologically, my research is underpinned by decolonial theory, post-colonial theory, and Afrofeminism, and also a Zimbabwean philosophy known as Hunu. And Hunu is related to the more commonly known Ubuntu, and it is a philosophy, a metaphysical and cultural philosophy that is around the universality of esteem, interconnectedness, and relational ways of knowing, basically. And it's important that, as I'm researching people from this community, that I use that particular philosophy. In terms of impact and innovation, so my research, I feel, is inherently innovative in the sense that it is the first research of its type in the United Kingdom in centering the lives of that particular group of young people. And in terms of impact, those young people have been silenced, in a sense, made invisible, because of the fact that there has not been any academic research that has looked into their lives and experiences. So there will be that marked impact in kind of, elevating their voices and amplifying their voices. In terms of potential contribution to theory and new knowledge, because again, it is novel, there isn't a research that's been done that's like it, there is a very strong rich opportunity to theorize and offer new insights into the fields of sociology, social anthropology, and diaspora and migration theory. I am very, very proud of the journey that I have had from being a 24-year-old immigrant in 1998 to standing here and being able to actually contribute to the amplification of voices of women who have come after me. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Christine. We'll now hear from our other 125th anniversary scholar, Oluwaseun Olushola. Seun is a PhD student in the Mathematical Biology School in the University School of Mathematics under the supervision of Dr. Alexandra Zeller and Professor Sarah Jabari. Seun is studying the population dynamics of Daphnia, in a wastewater biofilter using delayed differential equations. Over to you, Shaun.
When I think about the theme, innovation and impact, I do not only think about new technologies or big breakthroughs, I also think about the journey that led to them. My journey into research has not always been linear. I was born in Birmingham, moved to Nigeria as a child, and later came back to Birmingham for university. Those years in Nigeria shaped me deeply. They taught me discipline, resilience, community, and the idea that challenges are not always setbacks, that sometimes they serve as the very foundation for growth. My return to Birmingham was far from smooth. My first year at university coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic, and my university results in mathematics fell short of my own expectations. At that point, it would have been easy to quit, to move on, to try something different that wasn't mathematics, but I always held on to the firm belief that I could grow within a subject that I deeply love. In my short lifetime, I have learned that progress is not always straightforward, and the conditions that surround us shape who we become. I think the same is true for research and impact. It's not just about the final result, it's about understanding the journey that led to that result in the first place. And that brings me to my research. When we think about wastewater treatment, we probably think about pipelines, filters, chemicals, and non-organism that is smaller than a grain of rice. Daphnia, often called water fleas, are freshwater organisms that can support the natural filtration of water. But behind the scenes, wastewater contains traces of pesticides, medicines, industrial chemicals, all of which current treatment plants struggle to remove. And these pollutants, they don't just disappear, they end up in our rivers, our ecosystems, and eventually our own bodies. I use mathematics to understand when a Daphnia-based water treatment system may or when it would be reliable and when it may be unstable. I build mathematical models that track the nutrients in the water and the Daphnia population. Here at the University of Birmingham, there are researchers that are currently developing a wastewater treatment technology that uses Daphnia to clean water through natural means. However, Daphnia are not the most reliable workers. Changes in their environmental conditions can cause the Daphnia population to boom or crash. And when the water quality crashes, when the population of Daphnia crashes, the water quality crashes with it. My research is mainly focused on dilution, the rate at which water enters and leaves the system. Dilution can be controlled in practice, and my results show that dilution does indeed change the long-term behavior of the Daphnia population. At some dilution rates, the population of Daphnia will be unstable. At some other dilution rates, the population of Daphnia would be stable, and hence you most likely will have effective cleaning going on. And so my research is practical in many ways. It's about understanding how dilution alters the behavior of the system. It's about understanding how or when the system may be unstable. It's about understanding how we can make a Daphnia-based water treatment system more reliable. And that's how mathematics can help even the smallest solutions, like Daphnia, make natural water treatment more reliable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Now we'll hear from another 125th anniversary PhD scholar, Ellis Richards. Ellis is currently a PhD scholar in the Department of African Studies and Anthropology, DASA, where he is doing research on the role of Black majority churches in Black communities right here in Birmingham. His research interests tend to explore the experiences of ethnic minorities within the United Kingdom. Over to you, Ellis.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. As said, a key part of my research is exploring the key roles that Black majority churches can do in providing a safe space for different Black communities. So for my research to focus on one predominantly black Nigerian church and one black predominantly Jamaican church, I want to share not only the shared experiences that they may have, but also important differences. Now, a lot of times in academia, black communities are seen as a monolithic group, and this neglects different cultures, migration histories, and lived experiences that actually shapes people's identities. So I plan to engage with both communities over the next 12 months through conversations, observations, and interviews with both communities. Thank you. Next slide. Sorry, and again. Cool. So when people think of black communities in Birmingham, most of the focus tends to be on London. However, Birmingham has the second largest black population in the UK, but despite this, despite its rich history, many of its stories is underrepresented in current research. So by me focusing on Birmingham, I'm shining light to an experience that is often neglected in literature. Sorry, next slide. Now, when people think of black majority churches, they only view them as places of worship, when in reality they also provide spaces for support, cultural identity, and belonging. Now, in Lazarus in East Handsworth, where I'm focusing my research on, it's usually described with negative stereotypes as being a crime capital, being poorly integrated, or just being a slum like these articles have suggested. While in these communities, black majority churches provide key initiatives that aim to combat some of these issues that these communities are facing. However, a lot of the times, their efforts are unrecognized by the general public. So, me being black British born, of Caribbean heritage, born and raised in Birmingham, this research is important to me not only on an academic level, but on a personal level as well. I actually grew up in a black majority church, which is down the road from Lazarus in East Handsworth. So I understand the importance of building trust, building familiarity, but also being culturally sensitive when communicating with participants. This perspective has shaped the way that I've done my research, because a lot of the times, black communities are seen as hard to reach groups, when in reality, they're not that hard to reach, but culturally appropriate approaches haven't been taken into account when engaging with them. So I made sure I focused on building relationships with the communities before I actually carried out research. And I did this by attending different local community events, but also attending church services. I also made sure that when I do carry out interviews, I do it in safe spaces where participants feel comfortable sharing their experiences, whilst also being open to more creative ways of expression, whether it's through art or through poetry, or anything that makes them feel more comfortable in sharing how they feel about things. And this is what makes my project innovative, because rather than expecting a community to adapt to the needs of traditional research practices, my research actually adapts to the needs of the community. So, the impact of this project actually goes far beyond academia. Not only does it change negative stereotypes of Lazarus in East Handsworth, but it also highlights the role that black majority churches have in their local communities. Furthermore, it provides an opportunity for local people to share their own experiences and perspectives that are often, rather than outsiders who are unfamiliar with the complexities of the areas, to speak for them. Ultimately, this research highlights the importance of cultural nuance black-led research. It also highlights the importance that black majority churches have in these communities. And furthermore, it's important because representation shapes inspiration. When people see themselves in research, in academia, in leadership, they can see this as a way of being inspired by what they see, inspire the next generation to let their voice be heard and their communities be heard as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Alice, for that presentation. Our last but definitely not the least presenter for today is Nneka Igwebuike. Nneka is another 125th anniversary scholarship recipient, a second-year microbiology and infection PhD student in the Buckner Group at the University of Birmingham's College of Medicine and Health. Her research explores how the human gut microbiome influences antibiotic resistance. Over to you, Nneka.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. So as you've heard from my colleagues, last April, we attended the Holding the Space conference in Westminster, which is a conference that is aimed at amplifying Black-led research and providing engagement opportunities for them. It is important to note that there is still a major underrepresentation of Black people in academia across the UK, with less than 5% forming senior academic levels and higher education parts of the university, and an even lower percentage in STEM. So spaces like these are essential to ensure that there is growth in confidence, and as well as informing other people that could be interested in this career to know that they have these opportunities and be able to access people that are in it. And I'm very grateful that I was able to experience it. Here at the university, my research is on antibiotic resistance, which basically means when bacteria no longer respond to the treatment that we give them, and they're able to cause infections that could ultimately, and do, lead to loss of lives. It's a very important thing that we are looking at because it has led to the loss of millions of lives in both developing and developed countries. There have been reports that suggest that in the year 2050, there could be over 30 million deaths attributed to bacterial resistance. So it's definitely an issue that needs to be resolved as soon as possible, and I'm very happy that I can contribute even just a little bit with my research. So what I look at specifically in antibiotic resistance is a mechanism in which bacteria are able to directly contact each other. So a good bug can contact a bad bug, and the bad bug will send resistant genes to it, and that just helps amplify resistance. So I'm looking at this specifically in the context of the gut microbiome. So this is basically our gut that has lots of bugs in it. So what we are thinking is that there is something in our gut that is influencing this process. So my work I am working to uncover what could be influencing this process in the gut microbiome. And I do this by creating sort of a fake gut, so a synthetic model that creates a gut outside of the human body, and we can study this process to see what drives it. Ultimately, I would love to contribute to this research area, not only by doing efficient research, but by also being confident to communicate my results effectively, eventually go on to inform infection management practices and such, and things of that sort. But it's something that this conference helped me to keep in mind, just that it's good to learn how to be more confident and be able to communicate effectively like I'm trying to do here, and just keep that moving forward as I navigate my PhD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nneka. I am sure you all, like I do, have some burning questions that you'd like to ask our presenters. So we are going to move into the question and answer section. We're going to do this by using the Vivox app. So if you use your phones and you scan the barcode, you can submit questions, and then Queenie and I will take turns moderating. So.
Can we call on our speakers to please come and take your seats on the stage, please? Thank you very much. Could you give them a round of applause as they come along, please? Thank you. Just sit on them. Does anyone not have a mic? Yeah. What's that? Yeah, she was bringing it. There's one more chair. There's one more for you guys. This is mine. So if you've got your questions, you could please, thank you. Thank you very much. Could you please scan the barcode on the screen and type in your questions when the chat box comes up, please? Thank you. So the first question goes to you, Nneka, and someone wants to know, based on your experience, how can spaces like these encourage impact and innovation for other scholars or early career researchers?
Thank you. I think spaces, by that you refer to?
Black spaces?
Yeah.
Spaces that allow Black PGRs present their research.
I think this is incredibly significant, especially as I am an early career researcher, and just having the space to do this and also practicing, it's helping me to learn and improve my presentation skills and also to get feedback. So I think that's really important. And we can also network and see and meet more people that are in this community as well as people that are outside of it. So I think it's quite encouraging, I would say. It should keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Sheung, the next question is yours. And it says, what were the motivating factors that led you to do your work on Daphnia with your research team?
It's funny, it's a question that someone asked me during my poster session earlier today. So I think when it comes to mathematics, I'm sure there are a lot of us that hate it or that just gave up on it very quickly when we were in secondary school or even maybe primary school. And I think it's common for us to kind of think that, you know, with mathematicians, we just do mathematics for the fun of it. But for me, I've always loved mathematics from a very young age. It's something that I've always wanted to do. But to also use maths to make impact, to apply it into something that makes the world a better place, even if it's just a little bit. And when I came across the project and, you know, there was impact towards, you know, addressing clean water, which is obviously a global issue that I don't need to go over, but then it was kind of like a no-brainer for me to, you know, to delve into that and enjoy maths whilst, you know, making impact, basically.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheung. Just because I'm taking these questions by speakers, I'm going to skip to the question for Christine, and then I'll come back to the other one. So Christine, this is for you. And someone wants to know, why is it important to highlight the experiences of the Zimbabwean community outside of the experiences of the African community in the United Kingdom?
Thank you. Good question. It's interesting. I'll go back actually to Ellis's presentation where he talked about sometimes Black communities being regarded as quite monolithic and being homogenized, whereas, you know, the continent of Africa is extraordinarily large with a lot of different countries that are very culturally diverse. And so although there has been some research into some communities, there are very specific cultural issues that are unique to that particular community that aren't necessarily represented by research that's been done before. There's a lot to learn from those communities, but this is a distinct and unique country with a distinct and unique culture. And so how identity plays out in terms of diaspora for that community will differ from how it does in a different African community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christine. So the next question says, more of a thank you than a question. I love this time of year and hearing about what our PGR community do their research on, and you did not disappoint. Oh, thank you. It takes courage to present, and I hope that your extremely well-presented talks are an inspiration to the PGR community. Thank you very much. Ellis, this is your question. So how did you settle on the two churches you were to none?
Okay, so the focus was Birmingham, and initially I attended quite a few churches across Birmingham from North to South Birmingham. I found one church in particular in like Northwest Birmingham, which I saw the potential and was like, I really want to work with this church. However, there were so many hierarchical issues that stopped me from eventually working with this church. But from being in that area, I was aware of so many other churches in that area. And from then, I guess I went off personal feeling of going in these churches, which ones I was more connected to, which ones I could relate with, which ones had the most potential for doing research with. And it just so happened that the two churches that I did settle on were on the same road. It just happened that they were also surrounded in an area that was struggling, deprived, or as you saw in my slides, quite unfairly stereotyped. And the churches were doing key things in the community, but just in different ways. So then that's how I settled on the two churches.
Perfect. Thank you, Ellis. This question is for all the speakers. I will start with you, Christine. Someone wants to know, to start by saying, the low rate of young black academics has been well documented in this session. How do you think we can encourage more young black students to see research as a viable career pathway? And what kinds of support do you think would make this process effective rather than performative? Could you share your brief thoughts on that?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So I think that the answer to this is around not just kind of ways in which to increase representation at postgraduate researcher level, but representation in higher education in general. So I could talk forever about this, but I won't. I am an ex-secondary school teacher, an ex-assistant head of a secondary school, and I know about some of the issues that affect young people from black communities within school in terms of engagement with schooling, full stop. And they are, there's a multiplicity of different reasons that I can't go into, but it would be difficult, I think, just to talk about representation at the kind of the higher end, at postgraduate research level, without talking about, first of all, addressing issues that are stopping young black people from going into higher education, full stop. Obviously, there are other things that can happen, such as events like Holding the Space, or other events where black PGRs can maybe speak to young people who are still at undergraduate level, or even go out into schools and do, extension work in secondary schools and speak to, GCSE students, A-level students, etc. But that, that there is an extent to which that can fall into something that is a bit more performative, whereas the issues are fundamental, I feel. I don't know. There are some things that we can do, but I think the problems are very deep-rooted.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ellis, please go ahead.
I'd say, in my personal experience, the scholarship that all of us are on is if that can continue, that would be a good avenue for more people, only because I feel like when I speak to people that I know, I don't really know many other PhD black people outside of the people here and in our cohort and part of our network. So when people hear that there's opportunities to actually do research in their own communities, they're like, wow, I can't believe you're actually getting partly funded to do something that you're a part of and something that you're passionate about. And I feel like if there's more opportunities for us to kind of share our own stories and expand on them and go further, then that can do a lot to raise representation.
Thank you. Neka?
I think basically the same thing that Ellis has said. It's the fact that we were given, the scholarship, we have the opportunity to pursue things that we're passionate about. So if that could go on, that would be amazing. And again, it's also opportunities like this where we kind of share our stories and show the progress that we've made so far with the opportunities that we've been given. And as she said as well, community outreach, speaking to the younger generation, that could also inspire people that, oh, I actually wanted to do that. I can see someone that's doing that already, and it just says, okay, so that's possible for me as well. So I think representation is a big part of it, and just having opportunities.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Sharon.
Just a few words. Opportunity, but also having the belief and the confidence that you are deserving and belonging of the opportunities goes a long way as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I will come down to the third question just because it's addressed to someone. Neka, this is your question. It says, in the gut microbiome, do both the good and bad bugs share these resistance genes?
So the specific mechanism that I'm interested in is how the bad bugs give it to the good ones, and at the end of the process, both of them become bad guys. So basically, this is in layman's terms. My supervisor is here today, so I'm speaking in very layman terms, but it's basically that's kind of what happens, is at the end of the process, resistance continues to spread because the bad bacteria infects the good ones or by direct contact, and they go on to continue to replicate, and everything just becomes crazy, and that's how we get multi-drug resistance. So it's possible for one bacteria to carry more than one bad resistant gene. So that means that they're resistant to maybe 3 drugs. So the pathogen that I'm interested in, Klebsiella pneumoniae, it's actually one of the worst ones out there. It's multi-drug resistant, and it also has genes that can break down last resort antibiotics. I'm going a bit off topic here, but yeah. Long story short, they can get it from each other.
Thank you very much, Neka. So because we're short on time, we're going to just take one last question. And I am going to exercise my veto power to think of the question that I feel. Okay, we will go with the first one at the top, just because there's someone who likes it. So I think it's based on popular demand. So guys, anyone can answer. What advice would you give to Black PGRs who want to find community? I really enjoyed this session. Let me start with you, Sheun.
Just reach out. Just put yourself out there. You're not alone, is what I would say in very short terms.
Perfect. Ellis?
Similar, but I'd also say on top of that, even though we can say reach out, but sometimes we're not visible. And I think one of the best ways is, if anyone's in here, communicate with one of us. There's quite a few Black communities that we're all a part of that are PGRs. And if I could give additional advice, I did my master's here at UOB. And when I did my master's here, even though I'm from Birmingham, the university was not like my experience of Birmingham, if that makes sense. So I didn't really have much of a community there. And even though I got through my master's, but I kind of struggled with the social aspects. But doing my PhD, being part of the 125 cohort, being part of the Black PGR network, it makes a very big difference in terms of being able to feel safe, being able to conversate, not have to think too much about things. And I feel like it benefited me a lot in my academic life as well.
Thank you. Neka?
Basically the same thing is, reach out to us if you see us, and if you're interested in anything, we're happy to help. I'm a part of both of those things that he mentioned, and I think it's been really helpful for me as well. I moved to Birmingham for my PhD, so it was nice to have like a welcoming community here. So definitely reach out, and we're happy for you to be a part of us and get to know you.
Perfect. Christine?
Really kind of in agreement with everything that's already been said. But there is a network that has a WhatsApp group, and it's the Black PGR WhatsApp group. And if you ask any one of us, we can give you the number, and you can plonk yourself onto that group. And it's a really supportive group. And there are events that happen every once in a while. Very, very generously funded by the doctoral school, and we meet and we talk, etc., etc. So there is support out there.
Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you very much to all of you guys, and to an amazing audience as well. If you do have questions that we couldn't take, please feel free to walk up to any of these amazing speakers and continue the conversation with them. But for now, it is thank you.
Impact and innovation. And I think we can all agree that today's showcase of brilliant scholars embodied just that. Right, Queenie?
From Daphne to the experiences of British Zimbabweans to the impact of black churches to antibiotic resistance, I'm sure that we can all agree that these talented researchers, black PGRs, have shown us what it means to do research that is both impactful and innovative.
Yes. So we would therefore like to thank you all for presenting, sharing with us such riveting presentations. And not only were we entertained and informed, but I think we can all say that we've been inspired to move in that same theme of impact and innovation.
Exactly, and we would like to say a huge thank you to our colleagues at the UDS who worked with us behind the scenes to make this happen. A huge thank you to Nadira Abdin and to Kerry Myers, and also to our fellow UDS ambassadors. I don't know if they're in the room, Fran, Jessica, and Saskia. A big thank you to you all.
Finally, we would like to thank you, our audience, for taking the time to join with us today. The day, however, does not have to end here. Please join us at the University Doctoral School's award ceremony, where the recipients of the Michael K. O'Rourke Best Publication Award and the Award for Excellence in Doctoral Research, as well as the winner of this year's Research Poster Competition, will be announced. During this ceremony, we will also be doing the prize giving for the 2026 3-minute thesis finalists and 3-minute thesis People's Choice Award. After that, please also join us for the drinks reception in this same building. We look forward to seeing you there. However, if this is your last stop for today, as we Jamaicans like to say, take care, walk good, and please connect with us on all our socials. Thank you so much.